Hi guys, so welcome to Capital. This is conversations about purpose and the art of living. This is part one of the introduction. My name's David Stone, and in this video I'm going to explain why I'm doing what I'm doing. In part two I'm going to go into a lot more detail about the context, the background, the methods that I'll be using. But basically, as I approach my 70th year to heaven, 10, reflecting on the world as we find it and as I see it working around my own personal concerns, and then the concerns I have for my children and for my grandchildren, from my kinship groups, relatives, family, cousins, nephew, nieces, outwards through all my associates and the people I've worked with and have worked with over many years, and then looking at our species being, if you like, and then reflecting on where we are in terms of the zeitgeist, the moment, the rise of the far right, Trump in the White House, 2025, what I see is the politics of despair, division, antagonism, rapacious acquisition, all underpinned, underscored by a Western dominated culture that has at its root a capitalist kind of culture, philosophy, mindset, way of working, where we see the cost of everything and the value of nothing, and where I see increasingly with the advent of artificial intelligence hundreds of thousands, millions of jobs being lost, and some of that is for the good because the jobs are rubbish. But what replaces it? Anyway, how did we get to where we are? And I think that since the Enlightenment, which was an absolutely necessary departure from beliefs, directions that descended from a kind of supernatural order, God, the Spirit, the divine inspiration, and then through that process bishops, priests, the aristocracy, the kings, this kind of like hierarchical thing. The Enlightenment was a necessary departure from superstition and replaced it largely with reason. But within our complex makeup of different ways of operating, we operate on the basis of superstition still, I think, and alongside that we have rationality, intuition, and other forms of understanding. And I think we just took a wrong turn, because the Enlightenment, what it did was, by separating us from the supernatural, also divided us from the metaphysical aspects of our engagement with the world, those things which were not easily subject to reason, things like morality, things like virtue, things like unknown parts of the physical world, the ontology of existence that couldn't be subject to the scientific method. So I've got no doubts in my mind that the scientific method is the most reliable basis for objective evidence that we've got, but it's not the only form of knowledge or epistemology. So I want to look at how we got to where we are, and how that wrong turn that led to both, if you like, the extraordinary use of current technology, artificial intelligence at its optimum could be fantastic, but alongside that, the bomb, a sort of scientism which for many centuries justified a racist ideology, in which different parts of our species were decategorized as being less than human, giving Nazis the justification to slaughter millions of Jews, and giving white Western civilizations the rights, the justification to impose the slave trade on countless millions of people from Africa. But what has that got to do with anything? Well, the issues that I see coming out of the moment are around a kind of attempt by the far right to restore the hierarchy. And I have in my sights a number of targets for that. In terms of like popular culture, the main one is Andrew Tate, who I despise. His misogyny, his bigotry, his small-mindedness, but the fact that he appeals to hundreds of thousands of young men in particular, particularly what they call the incels, is a huge, huge problem. And I want to get underneath why I think that's occurred. But he's less significant in terms of his persuasiveness in terms of ideology. I think he's more of a kind of caricature. More challenging, but I think the targets I need to kind of like really go for people like Jordan Peterson, Niles Ferguson, historian, Steve Bannon, Andrew, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Candace Owens is despicable, Elon Musk, Ben Shapiro, Douglas Murray, all these people who seem to believe that some kind of Judeo-Christian reality sits above anything that we can discern through our reason. As Peterson calls it, science is nested within this Judeo-Christian spiritual kind of hierarchy, in which things like objectivity, truth, morality emanate without this framework. And the framework is hierarchical and it's triangular, and it usually involves old white men at the top, and culture, tradition, conservatism, values of authority reside, and unspoken quite often and seldom declared, the bedrock for this hierarchy, in my view, is capitalism, is the drive for profit, the alienation of people from the process of production, the judging of everything in terms of monetary values. And someone somewhere said that capitalism contains within it the seeds of its own destruction, and I think that's true of all civilizations that have been around in the past. And my vlog is called Capital, and it is a modest but ambitious attempt to contribute to a conversation about purpose and the art of living. Why purpose? Because as we departed from the supernatural, from the religious, from the hierarchical, top-down driven form of understanding and motivation, as Nietzsche said, with the death of God came Dostoevsky, the brothers Karamazov, and anything goes. A kind of form of rank nihilism seemed to be part of the justification for the far right's rise. If there is no God, there can be no purpose, there can be no meaning, and we all become completely selfish and driven by nothing other than naked greed or aspirations. I don't believe that for a second, and I want to provide an alternative view. And of course, I need to say why, and what my qualifications are for that. My view is that the purposes that exist are ones that we create for ourselves. And if you look at, Albert Camus' view on absurdism, which sets out his view that the world is basically incomprehensible. I don't follow that, and I'll explain why later on, but even if it were, we are but a speck in this vast cosmos of endless universes, where, as we understand it today, it's highly likely that we're the only conscious beings here. So what's the point? For me, it gives the grounding for all the point. The point is we are able to shape, determine our own purpose. And I think the Enlightenment set out to do that, but it went wrong. The art of living is completely different in some regards, but connected in this critical way. I don't think the art of living can be described, defined, articulated through a mechanical process of objective analysis. I do believe that purpose can be derived from a combination of science, imagination, and declarative purpose defined by us in our conversations about aspirations and the aspirations we have for our children, grandchildren, and for ourselves as we face our own mortality. I dread the future. I dread what's happening with the planet, with the world, with the climate change, with the fractiousness, the wars, the misdirection of our energies and resources towards things that I don't think have any justification or purpose. And yet we have this staggering potential, and I think uncontainable potential if we choose to put our minds to it. So, part one of Capital. I'm David Stone, I'm your host. In the next one, I'm going to set out the trajectory, the point of departure and the point of arrival. But all of this is hopefully a conversation. Some of it will be a dialogue. I've got many friends, family members, colleagues, associates who I'm going to draw into this debate. Most of them disagree with me, which is going to be interesting. But all of it will be informed by some monologues I produce, which are to trace through philosophy, through history, through sociology, through psychology, through a whole system of different approaches to examining evidence and the nature of belief. There will be categories of metaphysics, ontology, epistemology, drawing on a whole range of different sources of information. But I will come on to the detail of that in part two. It's a journey that is hugely ambitious, I know that, and slightly arrogant. I can feel the hubris myself. But why not? Why not? It could contribute in some small, modest way to a much bigger attempt of all of us in our different ways to contribute to something that sees a transformation of the way we live. That's why I'm here. I hope you get on board. I hope in time you come in and you give us all your views. In the meantime, welcome to Capital. I'm David Stone, your host, and I look to see you in the near future.